Hey everyone, Duke here, and today we are making the ultimate guide to the new Vow of the Disciple raid. Before we begin, I just wanted to make a brief note that if you need help to do this raid or other PvE things, I do help on my stream during the evenings at twitch.tv/dukeiscool, so come on by. When you first load into the raid, there's two brief mini encounters on the way to the pyramid. The first part, you just need to kill the projection of Savathun. Once Savathun is dead, everything else despawns, and the door will open. Follow the path until you get to the boat. Here there will be 3 abominations along with some other sporadic adds. You will also notice 9 orange glow sticks that you can pick up to gain knowledge stacks. All you need to do with these is pick them up and bring them back to the boat. Note that each guardian can pick up a maximum of 3 at one time. Also note that there will be a darkness debuff that starts stacking whenever you're away from the boat. However, once the abominations are down, the darkness will no longer stack, and you'll be free to move around as needed. Each time you get 9 knowledge stacks brought back to the boat will move deeper into the bog towards the pyramid, and you'll repeat the cycle. There's also 3 crystals that you can shoot along this path to open a door near the end for a secret chest, which I will link my video for that in the description down below. The secret chest is even super easy to get solo, so if you're not able to get around to running all 3 of your characters in a week, you can at least load in and get this first chest for some easy raid loot. Once you make it inside the pyramid, be on the lookout for a pillar with 3 symbols on it in the first room when you enter. The pillar shows the symbols of the secret rooms you need to enter and activate throughout the raid in order to get a guaranteed extra red raid weapon from the boss at the end of the raid, once per week. I have a detailed guide on this as well to all 9 secret rooms, which I will link in the description below as well. The first true encounter of the raid is the acquisition encounter. The goal for this encounter is to find the correct symbols for each of the 3 obelisks in the room in order to stop them from exploding and killing your team. Brief note here that there's many different ways to run this and all other raid encounters explained in this guide, so please don't take my or anyone else's word as the end-all, be-all, only possible way to run these encounters. Loadouts for this encounter are very flexible, with the only must-have being some way of stunning the unstoppable abominations that will be present in the encounter. My personal favorite loadout is the Syncopation with Null Composure and Galahorn. For subclasses, pretty much anything will work, but I definitely am enjoying Void 3.0 on all 3 classes personally, and Stasis for Warlock and Hunters especially will be a solid option as well. For mods, I'd recommend Ammo Finders and Scavengers for your heavy and special of choice, and don't forget Lucent Finisher if you're running out of heavy, as there's plenty of Unstoppables to Finisher in this encounter for free heavy ammo. Once your loadouts are set, split your team into 3 groups of 2 for each obelisk in the room. One member of this team will be the Defender, which will be responsible for protecting the obelisk from enemies, as enemies can actually attack the obelisk itself in order to fill up the little bit of orange juice you can see and cause the wipe timer to speed up. The other will be the Attacker, which will be responsible for going to different rooms throughout the encounter and remembering the symbol that is needed for later. When the encounter starts, the reading pillar next to one of the obelisks will have either a Traveler or Pyramid symbol on the top of it. This symbol denotes which side of the room has a hidden taken knight. Finding and killing this knight quickly is paramount, as it is the only way to get the second symbol on your reading pillar to appear. These knights tend to hide further back and in the corner of each section of the map, so use your radar and don't be afraid to push up a bit in order to find them. Once the knight has been found and defeated, that same reading pillar will now have a second symbol on it. This symbol correlates to one of the rooms found around the map, which will need to be entered by the attacker in order to proceed. If this room is closed when you get there, either shoot or call for someone else to shoot the little crystal in the middle of the room that starts the encounter in order to open all doors that are closed, as well as close all doors that are open. Once the attacker is actually in that room, the 3rd symbol will appear on the reading pillar for the Defender to look at and call out. For this symbol, there's only 2 possible callouts, a colorful sun or a black and white sun, which can be shortened down to light or dark respectively. In the attacker room themselves, there will be 2 glyph keepers that have a symbol on the wall near them, with the same light and dark symbols in case you forget. But the light callout will always be on the left side glyph keeper, while the dark callout will always be on the right side. You only need to kill the glyph keeper on the side for the callout that is made from your pillar, but you can kill both. The main thing is to remember the symbol, or glyph, that the correct glyph keeper leaves behind when you kill it. So if your callout was light, you'd remember the symbol from the left side glyph keeper, or if your callout was dark, you'd remember the right side glyph keeper's symbol. This same pattern needs to be done for all 3 reading pillars, basically simultaneously. As soon as the first knight that I mentioned before goes down, and that first side starts with their second and third symbol callouts, a second reading pillar will have a symbol up top denoting which side the second taken knight is spawned on. Kill that to get your second symbol and continue the same way as the first group did. And the third reading pillar will get their knight as soon as the second knight goes down as well. Once you've gotten all 3 correct symbols from the glyph keepers, you'll need to figure out which of the 3 obelisks has all 3 of those symbols on it. I'll show the official names of each of the symbols on screen and also link a picture of them in the description, but I personally prefer that people just do their best to describe each symbol and kind of learn it as we go, as I feel that flexibility is a better learning tool than rigid memorization. Go with whichever way works best for you and your team though. Once you find the correct pillar, you'll need to shoot all 3 of the symbols at the same time. I'd suggest making sure at least 2 peoples are at the pillar ready to shoot. You can angle yourself pretty easily to see at least 2 sides at the same time to shoot 2, while the other person shoots 1. Make sure they all stay lit up and shoot them again if you need to, and the conflux should accept the offering. If you're either too slow to shoot or shoot the wrong ones, it will instead reject your offering, reset the obelisk, and fill up some of that juice I was mentioning earlier on the obelisk. Just as before, if this juice fills up all the way to the top before the obelisk has accepted your offering, the obelisk will explode and kill everyone for a wipe. Assuming you were able to get the obelisk to accept the offering, everything will reset, you'll have a few seconds to breathe and pick up ammo, and get ready to do everything again from the top. You'll need to repeat this entire process for all 3 obelisks, and once the third obelisk has accepted your offering, the acquisition encounter will be complete, and you can get your loot. The second encounter is the Caretaker encounter. For this encounter, our goal is to complete the ritual to activate damage plates that make the Caretaker vulnerable to damage before he can get to the obelisk and blow it up, causing a wipe. There will be 3 floors of repeating a very similar process with a final 4th floor last stand to finish him off. For loadouts, I'd recommend 5 sleeper simulates with 1 divinity. There's other things that can work and maybe be even better, but this combination is one of the easiest to pull off, is still extremely strong, and these weapons are deterministic and don't require any extra grinding to go for god rolls or anything like that for them to actually be strong. I once again like Null Composure here for reservoir bursting some adds, and will usually use a pulse unless I'm on the symbols team, where I prefer a faster fire rate weapon like an SMG. If you're running out of heavy and need more damage, a sniper is always a solid option as backup for the DPS phases. To start, you'll want to split into 3 teams of 2 again, but this time each team is taking care of very different and designated roles. The first team will be 2 people on ad clear, 1 on each side of the room, making sure to protect both the rest of your team as well as the obelisk itself, as just like in the first encounter, enemies attacking it will increase the juice within and cause a wipe faster if it fills up all the way. The second team will be the bait team. When the encounter starts, the Caretaker will teleport up to the far middle of the room from the raid flag and start trying to walk up one of the ramps towards where the obelisk is to blow it up. This team's job is to try to substantially slow down his ability to do that. I prefer to have 1 person on each side of him, and whichever way he faces is the person that's going to walk up right next to him in order to get his gaze. Once this gaze is acquired, his head will glow and can be shot. Once you shoot the head, the person behind him should now see his back open and glowing, which can be shot to stun him and stop his movement completely for about 5 seconds. You'll want to continue to repeat this process as much as possible to give your symbols team plenty of time to complete their role. 2 things to note after stunning the Caretaker. 1, you'll notice a bunch of flying worms come shooting out of him, which will be buzzing around the center of the room. I'd recommend taking any downtime you have to shoot these, as if you miss a stun for too long, they'll come and aggro and probably kill your gaze holder. Secondly, you can also help kill some adds while waiting for the next stun, because while most people think of ad clearing as the more basic role in many encounters, there's quite a few ad spawns here, which can either kill someone on your team, or end up causing the encounter to wipe if too many are attacking the obelisk, especially on the 2nd and 3rd floors. The final team will be the symbol team. This role combines the pick up glow sticks from the outside encounter with the remembering symbols of encounter 1. Inside the door that opens when you shoot the crystal that starts the encounter will be numerous glow sticks with symbols above them. Your goal here is to pick up to 3 of these glow sticks while also remembering the symbols of the glow sticks that you pick up. There's a few things here that make this more challenging. There will be 2 wizards in the room that are basically immune to damage that will be attempting to kill you, so try to avoid them the best you can. Also, this room will give you stacks of pervading darkness the longer you are in it, with 10 stacks killing you instantly, so you can only be in the room for a limited amount of time. As mentioned, the goal is to get your max of 3 pickups, but it's better to get 2 or even just 1 than to die either to the darkness or wizards and make no progress. I'd recommend calling out your symbols as you pick them up to A, remember them easier, and B, have your teammate know what symbols you have. I'll explain why in a second. Either way, your teammate will need to wait at the door to reopen it when you're ready to come back out by shooting the crystal again. Walk up to the obelisk itself in order to see the message that it is waiting for your offering. At this point, you'll need to shoot all the symbols on the obelisk that you picked up in the dark room. If you picked up 3 that happen to all be on 3 different sides of the obelisk, you will definitely want to have your teammate shoot one of the symbols for you for consistency's sake, as you do need to shoot all of these symbols very quickly for it to accept your offering. If you only grabbed 1 or 2, they can still help out and shoot them for you if needed, but just make sure to wait at the obelisk to actually say it is waiting for the offering. I would also highly recommend actually finding the symbols on the obelisk before starting to shoot them, as it is definitely a tight timer on shooting them all here, and if you mess it up even just once, it fills the juice up substantially, as well as, unlike the first encounter, causes you to lose all progress on the symbols you picked up. You don't get a second chance to shoot them on this one. If it accepts the offering, these symbols will disappear off the obelisk. Your goal here is to get all 9 symbols to disappear in order to start the damage phase before the Caretaker makes it all the way to the obelisk, and also before the obelisk juice fills up all the way. Alternate who actually goes into the darkness room between the 2 teammates in order to give each person a chance to lose the darkness stacks before they have to go in again. Once all 9 symbols are gone, it will be the damage phase. Notice that there will be 3 plates on the ground, similar to the idea of Leviathan's Callus fight for those who have run it. One of these 3 plates will activate to start damage phase by glowing orange. The first activated plate will always be on the side that the Caretaker walked up the ramp on, so gather your team on that side. Bubble and Well are both useful here, but multi-tether, even more so with Orpheus rigs, and Nova Bomb are extremely strong options as well. After about 10 or so seconds, the current plate will turn off and you'll have to go to the next plate in the middle. And after about 10 seconds there, the final DPS plate will activate. Notice that the boss will have a soft health gate at about 1/3 HP, which will cause him to go immune and teleport away before you have finished with all the plates. You can actually do more damage than this gate if you're quick enough about it, but I'd recommend just saving some ammo when you get close to that gate for the second, third, and final stand floors. Using your supers before your ammo is a good idea as well, as the supers will regen with time, while ammo will not and require a bit of luck to actually get more, even more so for the Symbols team who will not be killing many enemies. Once the boss is teleported away, 2 staircases will drop down, allowing you to go up to the second floor. Take either one, and watch out for the gap at the top, while repeating the same process again. Both the second and third floors are pretty much identical to the first, other than the Symbols room getting bigger on each floor, with more holes to potentially fall into, while the third floor damage plates are much wider and far away from the boss than the first 2 floors. Once you get the health to the 10% tick mark on the third floor, one final staircase will come down, leading you to the 4th floor for final stand. Right in front of you at the top of the stairs will be the first damage plate already active, so step on and keep the damage rolling. The second and third damage plates will activate directly in front of you as needed. Kill him before the third plate runs out, or it's a wipe. We actually used a backup outbreak in case of running out of ammo completely during contest, but for most at-level groups this will most likely not be necessary. It may be worth remembering for when Master Mode rolls around though. Finish off the Caretaker here, and enjoy the loots. The next part is the jumping puzzle. This is by far the longest jumping puzzle in Destiny history, and I'd almost consider it an encounter in and of itself. I'm not going to show the whole path here, as I feel it would mostly just be watching while I'm not really saying much, but the main mechanic is to shoot these crystals in each section in order to activate some extra sections of the puzzle for your team to jump to. Splitting your team to jumpers with a few staying back to shoot the crystal and kill the waves of adds is probably the best idea. Once your team gets through each section of the jumping puzzle, the path will stabilize and everyone that stayed back will be able to go forward without anyone needed to control the crystal platforms. After the jumping puzzle comes the third encounter, the Upended. This is probably the most difficult encounter to learn to start, but also the most exhilarating and fun in my opinion. Previous experience in Eater of Worlds, Vault of Glass, and Last Wish will give you a bit of a heads up here. This encounter has 3 relics that your team is going to need to make use of. The first room introduces the Laser Beam relic from Eater of Worlds. This relic can be used to take down the shields from the otherwise invulnerable Taken Knights. Killing these Taken Knights will add 40 seconds to your wipe timer when killed, and believe me, you're going to want and need this extra time in each room. The second relic is the Vault of Glass Cleansing relic. This relic is introduced before going into the second room and will allow your team to be cleansed from the pervading darkness that will be present in the second, third, and fourth rooms. It works just like the Vault of Glass relic, so if you have some experience with that, this relic should feel just like home. The third and final relic is the Last Wish Taken Essence relic. This relic is introduced before the third room and is used to cleanse the Taken Blights that will be present in the third and fourth rooms. These blights will cause all nearby enemies to be immune until the blight is removed. You can remove this blight by running up directly on top of it and pressing your grenade button, just like cleansing worked in many of the encounters in the Last Wish raid. Now that we know each of the relics we will need to use and how they work, we can get into the actual mechanics of the encounter. The first room is going to teach you these mechanics in a pretty low-key way, before it starts to ramp up quite significantly in the following rooms. Before starting the encounter, I'd recommend splitting up into 3 teams of 2 for each relic. 2 for the laser, 2 for the cleansing Vogue relic, and 2 for the Taken Essence, as you will need to alternate who does these roles in each room. I'd also recommend having Overload, at least Overload Grenade, or maybe an SMG or auto rifle, as there will be a few overloads in this encounter. When you start the encounter by picking up the laser beam, 2 Glyph Keepers will spawn, the Scorn one on the left and the Taken one on the right. When killed, 2 things will happen. First, they leave behind 3 symbols that need to be called out. Throughout the entirety of this encounter, if you're holding any of the 3 relics that we mentioned, you'll only be able to see the symbols from the Taken Glyph Keeper that they leave behind, and if you have no relic, you'll only be able to see the symbols that the Scorn Glyph Keeper leaves behind. Second, when any pair of Glyph Keepers are killed, it will spawn a Taken Knight in that room. As mentioned before, the laser beam holder will need to kill this knight to add 40 seconds to your wipe timer. You'll have 1 minute and 15 seconds to finish each room without this additional time, which is fine for the first room, but you'll definitely need to take down these knights for extra time in the following rooms. Between the 2 sets of symbols, you will notice that one of them is the same for both Glyph Keepers. This mechanic of finding the matching pair is your goal throughout the encounter. Once you have the matching symbol, look at the door in front of you to see 6 symbols, and shoot only the one that was matching in order to open this first door. Dunk the laser beam relic on either side in this small transition room, and a new player will need to grab it next. There's an additional mechanic that anytime you dunk the relics in the transition room, you'll have a 30-second lockout to picking up any relic, so therefore every person on the team is going to be needing to use a relic at some point. Also note that if you happen to drop your relic at any point anywhere in any of this encounter, you will also get that same 30-second lockout, so I'd recommend in 99% of scenarios that you don't drop your relics other than to dunk them in this room. As mentioned before, this area will also have the Vogue relic, so make sure the first member of that team grabs the relic as well, and the next door will open. I'd recommend always doing a countdown to dunk and pick up these relics, as the timer starts as soon as the laser beam relic is dunked, and the time can be tight enough in this encounter for those few extra seconds to matter. For the second room, have 3 people go left and 3 go right, making sure that the 2 relics go opposite directions. The reason for this is that after killing enough enemies, Glyph Keepers will spawn again on both sides, but it is random to which side has the Taken or the Scorn one. By having a relic on both sides, you're guaranteed to have someone that can see the symbols that are left behind by the Taken Glyph Keeper. When both Glyph Keepers are defeated, quickly figure out the common symbol between the 2, and push to the back of the room where you will see the next door as well as a shielded knight. Take down the shielded knight with the laser beam, make sure everyone gets a cleanse here as your darkness will most likely be at least 5 or 6, and get ready to take down an additional Glyph Keeper on both sides. From the perspective of the back of the room, facing where you just came from, one will spawn close left underneath where you jumped down from, while the other will spawn just around the corner to the right. Defeat both of these and find the second common symbol. Another shielded knight will spawn in the same place as the first, as well to give you enough time to do all of this. Shoot both of these symbols simultaneously on the door to unlock it and get to the next transition room. Make sure to take a second when you first come in here to defeat the few screebs that spawn. You will notice 3 grab and dunk stations here. Have both your laser beam guardians at one station, both your Vogue relic guardians at another, and your first Taken Essence holder at the third. It doesn't matter where you line up here, the Taken Essence will spawn at whatever station you don't dunk the other 2 in. Do a 3, 2, 1 countdown and have everyone swap and pick up their respective relics to open the door to the third room. The third room will have a split pretty much right away, and my recommendation is to send the 2 people on the laser beam team left and the other 3 go right up the staircase. The 6th person, the Taken Essence holder, will need to bounce back and forth between the 2 sides as needed to cleanse the blights. For the Taken Essence holder, if the first blight is slightly to the right and right in front of you when you come in this room, the second will be at the top of the stairs to the left, so head up there first. If the first blight is closer to the bottom of the stairs on the left, you can go up the right staircase immediately after removing that first blight. Defeat enemies on your respective sides until both Glyph Keepers spawn. Remember that one of the relic holders need to call out the Taken Glyph side, and with this strategy you should have one relic holder on each side, and be good no matter which side the Taken one spawns on. Once the first callouts are made, make sure the laser beam holder shoots the knight that spawns in the middle floating platforms, and meet up on the corner of the right side for everyone to get cleansed. Continue to push forward and slay out everything that gets in your way. The Taken Essence holder may need to push a bit forward in order to cleanse any blights here, so that the rest of the team can slay out. Once the final 2 Glyph Keepers are defeated, make sure the laser beam holder is looking down towards the floating platforms to take out the second knight, which will give you plenty of time to figure out the second callouts. Once both callouts are confirmed, shoot them on the door and continue into the final transition room. You should have at least a few seconds to get everyone settled here, so make sure everyone is ready with their partners to swap relics and then continue into the final room. Here you'll have a blight to cleanse immediately to the right or left, with a second blight on the opposite side of the first. Have 4 people push the side that has the first blight, while the Taken Essence holder and 1 non-relic holder push the side that has the second blight and clear out everything, including the Glyph Keepers. Get the first matching callout and meet on the middle platform to get a cleanse from the darkness. Immediately in front on the next floating platform will be your knight to extend the time. Kill this and continue to push up into the room, killing everything in your path and making sure that the Taken Essence holder is bouncing from side to side, cleansing all blights. Once enough enemies are killed, the final 2 Glyph Keepers will spawn in. Take those down and have your laser beam holder look at the middle platform where the first knight died to kill a second knight. Killing this will give you plenty of time to confirm both callouts for the final door. Shoot them both, watch out for one final group of Screebs, and dunk all 3 relics in this room to finish the encounter. One tip that could come in handy on your runs is don't completely give up if a relic is lost off the map. It will respawn in the previous transition room, so depending on when it happens and which relic it is, you may have the chance for someone to run back and grab it while everyone else continues on. Just make sure you don't ignore it, because you will need it to progress in any transition room of the encounter, including the final one, to complete it. And now for the final boss, Rhulk. This is one of the most interesting and flowing boss fights in Destiny history, but really isn't too bad once you get the flow. This encounter takes a little bit from the last encounter and adds onto it in some pretty interesting ways. The main idea of this encounter is that there is an unpassable force field in front of you that you try to slowly push back further and further until it completely dissipates and you're able to directly interact with the boss. For this encounter, I'd recommend, if not require, that one person runs Divinity, while the rest can run Sleeper Simulant or another well-rolled linear fusion rifle. You can also use the Izanagi's and autoloading rocket swap, as briefly referred to as in the Caretaker section, but again, Sleeper does plenty well and is just quite a bit easier to pull off. I like pairing this with a sniper as well as Gnawing Hunger personally, but there's a lot of wiggle room outside of your main DPS tool. Supers-wise, I'd recommend Nova Bomb, Thunder Crash, and Tether, preferably multi-shot with Orpheus, for each class respectively. This is the only boss fight in the entire game where, just due to his movement and the way it works, Well and Bubble will not get much use. Due to not having a damage buff with this setup, I would highly recommend running High Energy Fire, as well as a way to become charged with Light. You can have some, or even most of the team, run Radiant Light to do this pretty effectively, as it will give everyone around you charged with Light when popping Super. I also like Elemental Charge, as I tend to make a lot of Void Elemental Wells with the rest of my build, but this is definitely not required. Starting off, you'll need someone to shoot the floating crystal above the boss's head, which will give you the Leeching Force buff. This buff does a couple of things. First, it activates the plate on the ground right in front of the raid flag, which when stood on with Leeching Force will spawn 2 crystals to the left and right side of the original one. When both of these crystals are shot, it will split the buff from the buffed person on the plate to both people who shot the 2 side crystals. Secondly, when a Guardian that has Leeching Force gets hit by the boss's Laser Beams of Doom attack, their buff will change to Emanating Force. Make sure to not get hit by this without the Leeching Force buff, as it will instead very quickly stack up your darkness and probably kill you. Once you do get the Emanating Force buff, you'll be able to go through the force field in front of you and go wherever you'd like in the arena. This Emanating Force buff will also be needed in order to dunk into one of the 6 pillars in front of you, which when done correctly will push the force field further back. Now that we know some of the general ideas, let's talk about the actual flow of the encounter. Have one person shoot the crystal to get the Leeching Force buff, and immediately split it to 2 other people by having them shoot the side crystals. While this is going on, slay out everything you can, especially focusing on the 2 glyph keepers. Out of the 2 people with Leeching Force, you will assign one of these people to eat the laser beam attack in order to get the Emanating Force buff, while the other person will purposely avoid the attack in order to keep the Leeching Force buff to resplit later. Once the 2 glyph keepers are down, either person with one of the buffs can call out the left side symbols above the pillar, while anyone without a buff should call out the right side symbols, and just like last encounter, you'll want to find the common symbol. Once the common symbol is found, look for one of the pillars that has the same symbol on it. We call the left 3 pillars L1, L2, and L3 from close to far, and the right side pillars R1, R2, and R3 again from close to far, but you can call them whatever as long as everyone is on the same page. There should be 2 correct pillars here. The person with the Emanating Force buff can dunk in either of them to progress the encounter and push the force field back. Around the same time, the person that still has Leeching Force should get ready to stand on the plate so that the buff can be split again and continue the same pattern. One of those 2 new buff people will eat the next beam attack to get Emanating Force, wait for the callout to dunk, and then the other person can resplit the buff again. You will need to repeat this pattern 6 times to get to the damage phase section of the fight. As long as you never lose the Leeching Force buff, the symbol you are looking for will be the same every single round. You'll just need to watch for the pillars to reset and find where the new correct pillar is. 3 quick notes here. First, you have 45 seconds with either one of the buffs until it kills you. If you go from Leeching Force to Emanating Force, it will reset this timer. So you have a very long time and can really pace this encounter compared to the last one. Also, there is an advanced strategy that involves double splitting the buff and dunking 2 Emanating Forces at the same time, which is quite a bit faster, but also includes even more moving parts, so I'd recommend this slower but steadier strategy for your first learning experience. And finally, if for any reason you lose all of the Leeching Force buffs, whether the Leeching Force person dies or all of them get turned into Emanating Force, you'll need to basically reset the encounter, but you will keep the progress you've made so far. The crystal will reappear in middle, you'll need to re-kill the glyph keepers to find the new symbols, etc. You could only mess this up one time though by losing all your Leeching Force buffs, as if the crystal needs to spawn a 3rd time, it will instead be immune and the darkness will kill you. Once you're up to the damage platform, the boss will have 2 direct attacks. The first has a small little cone on the ground in front of him, right before he does a dash attack. You'll want to avoid this. Each time he does this attack, however, he will leave behind his sword, which is vulnerable to being shot. By shooting this sword, you will get the Leeching Force buff like in part 1 of the fight. One of the other 5 people in the team that don't shoot the sword will need to watch where the sword broke in order to call out one symbol. It will either be Traveler, Pyramid, Light, or Darkness. Anyone without a buff will be able to see these symbols in the 4 corners of the room on the pillars, but the person with the buff will need to dunk it in the correct pillar without seeing it, just like in part 1. We name these pillars exactly the same as down below, with L1 being the first pillar on the left when heading up the stairs, L2 being the far pillar on the left, R1 being the close on the right, and R2 being the far on the right. However, you cannot just dunk until you convert your Leeching Force buff into Emanating Force, just like in part 1, which brings us to the boss's second attack. The second attack is like the beam attack from the first section of the fight, but this time it is in a plus sign in all directions around the boss. By being hit with this attack while having Leeching Force, you will again convert it into Emanating Force and be able to dunk the buff into the correct pillar. Again, if you don't have Leeching Force, you will want to avoid this attack to make sure the darkness stacks and direct damage the attack doesn't kill you. Once a pillar has been dunked in, the boss will stagger a bit and reveal a weak point on one of his shoulders or hips. Look for a glowing yellow spot to signify this. You'll want to shoot this until it breaks. As this is happening, your sword shooter can look to get a second Leeching Force and repeat the process from the first break. Get the callout for where to dunk, get the Emanating Force by eating the beam, and dunk in the called out pillar. Note that you can have more than one sword shooter or do this a bit faster, but I find that doing a shoot, eat, dunk, break, repeat strat is easier than trying to do multiple things at the same time, and there's plenty of time to do it this way. Repeat this process 4 times for 4 total dunks and 4 total weak point breaks to get to the damage phase. During damage phase, he will continue to do both his dash attack as well as his beams attack, so continue to avoid these while doing damage. Make sure to get your damage supers off, keep Divinity on the boss as much as possible, and use that heavy ammo for big damage. Once the boss goes immune, you'll want to head back all the way back to where you first started the encounter before he puts his force field back up and ends up pushing you off the map. You can quickly grab any ammo on your way back down before this field comes up, but make sure to do it reasonably quickly. From here, the crystal will respawn back in the middle, and everything will repeat exactly the same for a second round. The only difference is that for the second round's damage phase, I'd recommend holding all supers until the final stand if you think you're going to push him there. If you know for sure you're going to need a third phase, then do this for the third phase instead. The reason for this is that during Final Stand, you'll start getting stacks of Pervading Darkness no matter what, and need to kill the boss before you reach 10 and your entire team wipes. This Final Stand is not a joke, and I highly recommend having multiple supers as well as some backup ammo going into it, otherwise there is a very real and even likely chance that you'll wipe during Final Stand. Also, really try to make sure to not get hit by any beams right before Final Stand, as this will start you out with extra Pervading Darkness stacks before the Final Stand even starts, which will cause you to reach 10 and die even faster than normal. If you're able to take down the last bit of Rhulk's health before the darkness consumes you, congratulations! You've completed the Vow of the Disciple raid. Enjoy your loot, and don't forget that you can buy the red weapon of your choice from the spoils chest once per week for any weapons that you've already unlocked. You'll also get a guaranteed additional red weapon drop from the loot itself once per week if you did the secret rooms that I mentioned at the very start of the video. I hope you all enjoyed this Vow of the Disciple guide, and that it is helpful on your endeavors into this challenging but extremely fun raid. Don't forget to come on by the stream if you're looking for some help, or have any additional questions. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful day.